Welcome to Beyond the Pages. Join us as we embark on a journey through time and wisdom while we unpack Bible stories together.
Hello, everybody. My name is Debbie. I'm one of the hosts of Beyond the Pages. We want to remind you that with every episode, there's a study guide for each one of the characters, and you can find the link in the show notes. In this episode, we will be discussing the story of the paralytic and his friends. This story teaches us about the transformative power of faith, the significance of true friendship, and the depth of compassion that Jesus extends to those in need. It illustrates that reaching out for help and having faith can lead to unexpected and miraculous blessings. And I'm going to ask my mom to read.
Mark 2:1-12. A few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. They gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door. And he preached the word to them. Some men came bringing to him a paralyzed man, carried by four of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Now, some teachers of the law were sitting there, thinking to themselves, "Why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone?" Immediately, Jesus knew in his spirit that this was what they were thinking in their hearts. And he said to them, "Why are you thinking these things? Which is easier, to say to this paralyzed man, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Get up, take your mat and walk'? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he said to the man, "I tell you, get up, take your mat and go home." He got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them all. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, "We have never seen anything like this."
So there are 5 characters, not including Jesus or the Pharisees, I think they were. So there are 4 friends and the paralytic. First, we're going to talk about the friends. So I think that their character traits are determination, because it says that there was no room for them to come in. So they didn't stop and give up and say, "We'll come back another day," you know?
Right.
They found another way. And I think they're really creative because I don't think I would think of breaking through the roof, you know? And if you think about it, they had faith. What if they had faith that Jesus would heal their friend? If they didn't have faith, then what if they didn't think that, why would they go through the roof and do all that work if they didn't think that Jesus would heal him? What else do you think? What other
So I
character
wonder,
traits?
well, one of the things that first came to my mind was, so the friends knew that Jesus was in town. It says he was home. And they knew that they had this friend
Mm-hmm.
who was paralyzed. And so I wonder how that conversation went, right? I wonder if they were just sitting around and they said to their friend, "Hey, we heard Jesus. Have you heard about
Oh,
Jesus?"
yeah.
You know, how that conversation went. That's one of the first things that came to my mind.
Something else that I found interesting that it said was in verse 2, said that they gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left. I know that he had a lot of friends and family, but I don't think there would be that much, that he would have that many friends and family to come over when he
Who,
came in.
Jesus?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So I'm surprised that it would be full.
Well, I'm thinking that he had already done other miracles before.
Uh-huh.
And so people had heard about him and they wanted to come see him. They heard that he was in town They heard that he was home.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, he's home. Let's go to his house. So not only friends and family, but other people that just wanted to hear what he
Yeah.
had to say. Now, the other thing that came to my mind was, whose house is this?
Maybe Mary's
Well, it says on
or
verse,
Matthew's.
it says a few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home.
Home.
So is that his home? Or is it maybe Peter's home? Because where was it that they would, when they would come home to Capernaum, where would they stay? And so that's an interesting question too. Whose
Yeah.
house is this?
Uh-huh.
Right? So maybe we can assume it's Jesus' house.
Yeah.
Okay. So the friends talked and they said, you got to go see him. You got to get him to touch you or pray for you or see you or
Yeah.
something. So how do you think that conversation went?
I don't know, maybe they're like having lunch or something. And they're like, hey, I heard about this guy and maybe he can like heal you or something. Let's just go to see to test it out. But there's this question. It's, how do you think that they figured out how to get in?
Right, because they got there, so their paralyzed friend was in a mat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that the friends carried the mat,
Yeah.
right? So let's say they get there, but they're a couple of blocks away and they see a whole bunch of people like at the entrance of the house.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, but have you ever been to a really crowded event?
Yeah.
What do you do to try to get in
You try to like squeeze through the people.
and push? But are people,
But they're carrying the mat.
but they're carrying their friend. And are people usually like, oh, yeah, sure, go ahead and cut in line
No.
if I've been here waiting? What
Yeah.
do people do?
People like try to like shove you back, or they try to like
Get back
them.
in line.
Uh-huh.
So what do you,
So they must have been, like I said when I was talking about the character traits, they must have really been creative
mm-hmm,
when they like figured out to bring him through the roof,
right,
instead of finding like a back door or a window or something.
right. Well, maybe the house was just so packed that even through the windows, there was people right in
Yeah.
front of the windows. Now think about this though, because the guys got to the house, to the outside of the house, and they were trying to see how they can get in. They ended up going up to the roof. How did they get up on the roof?
I don't know.
That's a good
Maybe-
question, right?
Maybe at the top there was like,
Well, I think back then houses were a little bit different than now.
yeah, I was about to say they might have
Mhm.
had like something on top.
Back then, houses were more, they had like an open roof because people could go up there and sleep when it got really hot inside the house because they didn't have air conditioning, right?
Uh-huh.
And so maybe we can assume that there were stairs that
Yeah.
would take you to the roof, and that kind of
That's-
made
Uh-huh.
it easier.
That's what I thought in the beginning, but I was like, wait, if I'm thinking now, there's not stairs to get up to the roof.
Typically now in houses,
Uh-huh.
right? Yeah, but back then,
yeah, that's
mhm,
what I would picture.
yeah, because the roofs were often flat. And so
Yeah.
there had to be a way, if people were sleeping up on the roof, there had to be an easy way to get
Yeah.
there.
I wonder how big the house was, because it said like they gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left. But how big was the house that there was no room left?
Right. And what are large numbers mean? Like
Yeah.
50 people or
Mhm.
100 people?
Yeah. So, so when it says that, so we're at the point in time that they break through the roof, they're coming down.
Well, they're on the roof.
They're like breaking through the whatever the roof is made of.
So they decided, okay, we can't get through the door. We can't get through the back door. We can't go in the window. We can go through the windows. So they get on the roof.
Yeah. And I wonder what
They have to make a choice.
Yeah.
What's that choice?
To either like break through it or to just leave. So I wonder how the paralytic felt when he heard the friends like saying like, "Hey, okay, we're gonna try to break through the roof, and we're gonna like."
So think about it. What would you have done if, say, you were hanging out with your friends, you can't walk because of whatever reason, and it's something you would like to do, you would love to be healed,
Yeah,
and your friends come up with this crazy plan. What would you think?
maybe like is there no other option? Like, what else is that? Is this like it? Like, we could try to go through a back window or something. We could find something else that's not this. But the paralytic was willing, and
Mhm.
he actually let them like take him down.
I think I would be concerned because this is in my house. I would be doing damage to
Yeah, I'd
someone's
be
house,
scared of
right?
how they would react, like whoever owned the house.
Right. So I would be like, guys, I don't know. Like we're vandalizing.
Yeah,
We're this is bad. I don't think we should. That's the first thing that comes to my mind that I would say.
yeah.
But what happened?
He was willing, and he actually let them like come through, or he let them like bring them down. And I wonder how it would be if I was one of the people, if I wasn't the paralytic and I was one of the
Guests in the house, the people. Okay.
like listening to Jesus. So I don't know what I'd be thinking if I hear something on the roof
Hmm.
and I see it like start to break, and then I see this man on a blanket coming down. Like I don't know what I'd think. What would you think if you saw that?
Well, if I'm in the house and I start hearing noises,
I think it's something outside.
maybe a cat or something
Uh-huh.
on the roof, but then you start seeing that, wait, there's light coming through.
Yeah.
What's going on? I I would be surprised and scared, maybe like who's trying to
Yeah.
get in? What's going on? Um, I wonder what Jesus thought.
He probably knew that they were going to come down, you know?
Hmm.
But if he didn't, I don't know how you would like react. Like, oh my gosh, like, what are you doing?
And pretending that this was his home.
Oh, be like, oh,
Yeah, if this was his home, it's like, wait, who's breaking? What are
yeah.
you doing to my? Or if this was somebody else's home, the owner of the house,
Ugh.
be like, wait, I just replaced the roof.
Just put new solar panels on it.
What are you guys doing?
Um, so then in I think it's verse 4, since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it and lowered the mat the man was lying on. I wonder how long if I were one of the friends, I'd say, okay, we got to do it quick. Like if it's brick, that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know how long he's going to be there, if he's going out to lunch,
Mm-hmm.
if he's going to go meet someone. You don't know how long he's going to be there. So I'd be like, okay, we got to get this done quick. And I don't know what the top would be made of.
Mm-hmm.
Not straw, because then it would like fall through.
Mm-hmm.
But it would have to be hard. So I wonder how long it took them to build it.
To break.
To break it. Not build it, break it. But it said when they broke through,
Mm-hmm.
said in verse 5, when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, son, your sins are forgiven.
Whose faith?
Their faith, it says in verse 5,
Right.
their faith. So
who's
probably the friends. And I wonder like what the friends would have done. Like if they raced back down the stairs and said, no, my friend's in there, move, you know?
Mhm.
If they just like peek through the top or something, because they would have to hold the ropes
Well,
if there were
it says
ropes.
when Jesus saw their faith. So Jesus saw them,
Yeah,
right? Because he realized this is the man that's being dropped in his mat is not the only one here. There's other
yeah,
people here. So yeah, when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, "Son, your sins are forgiven."
And then after that, it said some teachers of the law, which we discussed. I don't know if it was 1 or 2 episodes before, which the teachers of the law are like lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
So the lawyers were sitting there thinking to themselves, why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? Why were the lawyers there? Maybe because they wanted to see if another miracle would happen.
So a lot of the times when Jesus was talking to his disciples and to his followers, um, there were also other people that were there that they weren't necessarily there because they wanted to learn from Jesus, but they were there because they wanted to catch him and like point at him and say, "Aha, you're pretending that you're the
Yeah.
Messiah." They didn't believe that he was. So
Yeah.
they weren't really there to learn, but they were there to just kind of spy and
And
see what was
judge.
and judge and see what was happening. Yeah.
So it says in verse 8 where we left off, immediately Jesus knew in his spirit that what was so to summarize verse 8, it says that Jesus like knew what they were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, why are you thinking like this? Like, what would you? And it says in verse 9, which is easier, to say this to the paralyzed man, your sins are forgiven, or to say, get up, take your mat, and walk? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. So he's saying, like, that, like, I'm, like, the Son of Man has authority. So he's saying, like, I have authority to do this. But maybe they didn't understand that he was the Son of
They
Man.
didn't believe that, right? They didn't believe that. And that's how sometimes they would say, "How dare you say that?
Yeah.
You're not God."
So it says, in verse 11, I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home. In verse 12, so he got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them all. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, we have never seen anything like this. So, for the paralytic, first for his character traits, he was willing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he let the friends,
Mm-hmm.
like, take him through the roof, And I think he was thankful that Jesus healed him. I think he was. I hope he was. But I think that he was like, that he didn't get out and be like, why would you do this? Like, I think he went to like tell everybody, hey, I'm healed.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think he was thankful. But if I were in the viewpoint of the lawyers, I don't know if I was trying to come up with like a point to say no, like that wasn't real. I don't know what I would say. Like maybe like, oh, that might have been like if I was a lawyer and I was trying to come up with a lie to say like, oh, he could have faked this or something. I don't know what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, probably would say this was planned,
Yeah.
or maybe not even focus on that, but say, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Saying that you can forgive sins. Maybe they didn't even focus on the fact that he was healed, but more on the fact of, how dare you forgive sins? Only God can do
Yeah.
that. Uh-huh. Now, can I ask you a question? So, what do you think would happen if this paralyzed man didn't have these four friends?
And like,
Say he was home that same day, he was still paralyzed. He heard Jesus was in town, but he didn't have the four friends.
I don't think he would have like been able to do anything. Like I don't think he would have tried to do anything Because I think the friends came up with going through the roof. I don't think the paralyzed man was like, make me a stunt man. I'm about to go through the roof, you know?
Right.
I think it was the friends. So if he didn't have them, I don't think he would come up with the idea. So maybe he just like tried to take his mind off it.
And I think this story is such a good reminder of what
Friendship.
a friendship and what good friends can do for you, and how important it is first on, to have those kind of people around you, but also to be that kind of friend.
Yeah. Um, how do you think it was experiencing Jesus healing you? Like how powerful do you think that would be?
I mean, that's life changing,
Yeah.
especially two things. One, if we don't know how long this man was paralyzed.
Yeah.
We don't know if he was paralyzed since birth
We don't know how old he was
or if he had an accident.
Mhm.
So, but let's assume he was paralyzed since he was a little boy, right? Most of his life, he couldn't walk.
Mhm.
And so, from one moment to another, all of a sudden you can walk. That's life changing.
Yeah.
But also, not only that, but Jesus didn't only heal him physically, but he also healed him spiritually because he forgave
Yeah,
his sins.
he said like I for I forgive you, like your sins are forgiven in verse 9. It says, which is easier to say to this paralyzed man, your sins are forgiven, or get up, take your mat and walk. And since he's Jesus, he said both, you know?
Right. He was able to do both.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And to actually mean them.
Now, what do you think that this whole event did to the friends?
I think that cuz after he said in verse 12, he got up, took his mat and walked out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the friends were like, when Jesus told the paralytic to go out and like take your mat and walk home, I think the friends were still on the roof, like peeking through the hole that they made.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he said that, I think they like raced down the stairs and like, "Hey, what happened? Like, how do you
Mm-hmm.
feel? You can walk? Like, how are you? You know?"
Can you imagine what you would feel if you were one of the friends?
I just feel like, oh my gosh, like he actually healed you. Oh, now we could do this. We could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that he could do so many other things that he couldn't experience. I'd be like, how do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you good? Are you, like,
Mm-hmm.
how does it feel to be? Because this is another thing that you can think about is obviously we've all been healed,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, but physically, if you're scratched, it doesn't like heal up like in a snap.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time. But what if you haven't used your legs
Mm-hmm.
for years? I'm gonna assume 18.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't use it for 18 years. And it's not like a scratch, it'll go away, right? And suddenly your friends take you to this man, drop you through the roof, and in a snap you're healed.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy,
Mm-hmm.
like all of these years. If I were him, I'd probably try to find remedies or medicines or something that can make you maybe not move your leg 100%, but like actually move it, or that you can walk. But after all of those doctors, all of
Mm-hmm.
those visits, all of the tries that you've had, in a snap, you're healed.
I think what really gets me about this story is verse 5 when it says, when Jesus saw their faith. So I wonder if there have been times where I needed to be that friend. And because of my faith, one of my friends is going to receive healing.
Mm-hmm.
And what if I don't do what I'm supposed to? Like, what if I feel in my heart, maybe I should do this for my friend, but for some reason or another, I don't.
Yeah, like what if you were what if you were one of the friends, but you
You just don't, you're like, nah,
yeah,
we're not
like
going to get there. They're
we're
not going
not
to let us
uh-huh.
in.
I don't have money on me right now. I
Mhm.
can't pay for it.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna let you guys pay for it either. I'm just gonna go home. Like, good
So, what
luck.
do you think it is important for us to remember?
I think that if you remember that Jesus can heal in
Mhm.
a snap,
Mhm.
that you always gotta try,
Mhm.
and that wherever you are, whenever you are, it doesn't matter if you're going through something physical or spiritually, that He can always heal you.
But what about you as a friend?
I think you should remember that you should always help when someone is in need, you know?
Mhm.
That you should always be determined to help them, compassionate and kind, to always help them when they need.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to remember that maybe through our faith, somebody else can receive healing. And if we're not willing to be that friend, or if we're not willing to sometimes break the law, like
Yeah.
sometimes do things that are out of our comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes something, you feel something in your heart, in your mind, like I should call that person, I should say this, I should
Yeah.
take them this, but you don't for some reason. Maybe that was the time when
That was your
God was going to
time.
use you to do something great. And because we're not paying attention,
You
we
didn't.
can lose that opportunity. And so I think that's just something to remember.
In Proverbs 18:24, it says, "One who sticks as one who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." And I think that we should always remember that we shouldn't be that unreliable friend, that we should always be the one who sticks closer than a brother.
Thank you for listening to Beyond the Pages. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and make sure to hit the subscribe button. Until next time, stay curious and keep those conversations going because every story is an adventure waiting to be explored.